The footage lasted only 43 seconds. But in those 43 seconds, a billionaire almost died, 5 men vanished, and a hotel maid became the most powerful woman no one saw coming. This is the story of Maria de Luna, the invisible worker who uncovered a global conspiracy and reminded the world that courage doesn't need a title. Because sometimes the person you overlook is the one who'll save your life. The security footage lasted exactly 43 seconds, just long enough to change lives, destroy reputations, and ignite one of the strangest justice stories the world had ever seen. The clip began with the polished marble of the Regent Grand Hotel's executive hallway gleaming under chandelier light. A billionaire in a gray suit, Raymond Holt, tech visionary and philanthropist, stepped out of his suite, phone in hand, surrounded by 5 men in black. At first, nothing seemed off. Just bodyguards, it appeared. Then, at second 27, Holt's hand reached for his throat. His legs buckled. One man caught him, too quickly, too precisely. Another produced something metallic, barely visible. And then, from the corner of the frame, a figure emerged. A woman in a faded housekeeping uniform, pushing a cart stacked with towels and glass cleaner. Maria de Luna, invisible to most guests, unnoticed by almost everyone, until that moment. The camera caught the blur of her motion. A spray bottle lifted, a flash of mist, a violent recoil. One of the men staggered back, clutching his eyes. Holt fell. Maria lunged forward, catching him before his head hit the floor. Then the feed glitched, static. When the footage returned, the hallway was empty except for Holt, gasping, and Maria kneeling beside him, her hands trembling but steady on his pulse. By dawn, the clip was everywhere. Hotel maid attacks billionaire's security team during medical emergency. Unstable employee or unexpected hero? The woman who took down 5 men. Every outlet had a version. None had the truth. In the public's eyes, Maria de Luna was either a savior or a psychopath. In hers, she was just doing what she'd been trained to do, protect life at any cost. But as the headlines exploded, she learned something far more dangerous than the 5 men she'd faced that night. The world doesn't always want the truth. It wants a story. Long before her name was trending across 1 million screens, Maria de Luna lived in the quiet rhythm of routine, a world measured by clean sheets, folded towels, and the hum of vacuum cleaners echoing through endless hallways. She was 47 years old, 5'2", wiry and calm. The kind of woman people passed by without noticing. Her hair was always tied back tight, her shoes always a size too big, easier on the feet for 12-hour shifts. To the guests at the Regent Grand Hotel, Maria was a ghost in plain sight, silent, efficient, invisible. She moved through penthouses that smelled of cologne and secrecy, scrubbing away evidence of lives richer than she could imagine. She knew who drank too much, who tipped too little, who cheated, who cried quietly in silk robes. She saw everything, and she said nothing. That was the rule. But after hours, her world was smaller, warmer. A cramped apartment on the city's edge. A son, Miguel, 19, with a scholarship he was terrified to lose. A cat named Luna who slept on her ironing board. Dinner was rice, garlic, and whatever could stretch across 3 days. The walls were thin, the light buzzed, but it was theirs. Sometimes, after her night shifts, Maria would stand on the tiny balcony, staring at the glittering skyline that hid the hotel somewhere among its towers. She'd whisper to herself in Tagalog, "Tahimik lang, basta ligtas." Just stay quiet, as long as we're safe. Few knew her story. Fewer would have believed it. Years ago, before she came to America, Maria had been something else entirely. A police trainee in a small city in the Philippines. Top of her class in defensive tactics, hand-to-hand combat, and threat assessment. She'd wanted to protect people, but after refusing to cover for a superior involved in a smuggling ring, she was dismissed. Blacklisted. Her name vanished from the force. So she started over, cleaning the homes of the powerful instead of guarding them. The transition from uniform to uniform was brutal. Same discipline, no respect. At the Regent Grand, Maria rarely spoke unless spoken to. Her supervisor called her dependable but dull. Guests left $5 tips and forgot her name before checkout. But the truth was, Maria didn't mind invisibility. It kept her safe until that week. The hotel had changed in subtle ways. New security personnel she didn't recognize, no ID badges but expensive earpieces. Guest floors sealed off for private events. Delivery trucks arriving past midnight. Maria noticed because noticing was her survival. She'd learned long ago that silence didn't mean ignorance. It meant observation. Then, on the morning of the incident, she'd been assigned a special request. Penthouse Suite 1807, reserved for a Mr. Holt. She didn't know the name meant anything. She didn't know it would change her life. All she knew was that the request came through a new supervisor, one who didn't look her in the eye. And when she asked about the 5 unfamiliar men posted near the service elevator, he just said, "Don't ask questions, Maria. Just clean what you're told." She nodded like always, but something deep in her gut, the part of her that used to scan danger from alleyways and training fields, whispered otherwise. For the first time in years, Maria de Luna felt watched. It was 9:42 p.m. when the quiet routine of Maria's life shattered like a dropped wine glass on marble. The service corridor leading to the penthouse level was empty. Too empty. Normally, she'd pass room service staff, hear elevator chimes, the distant buzz of conversation. But that night, it was all wrong. The air carried the sterile hum of surveillance, that peculiar stillness that exists right before violence. Maria's cleaning cart rattled softly as she pushed it toward Suite 1807, the executive penthouse assigned to her shift. She had a towel bundle balanced on top, a bottle of disinfectant polish in her apron pocket, and the sense that she was walking into something she didn't understand. She knocked twice. "Housekeeping," she said softly. No answer. Then came a faint sound, a man's voice, tight with fear. "Please, listen to me." Followed by another voice, deeper, calm, too calm. "You've said enough, Mr. Holt." The next second, a muffled impact, the sound of glass shattering, a groan, then silence. Maria froze, her instincts from long ego, the ones she'd tried to bury under years of domestic labor, flared to life. She pressed her ear to the door. Inside, she caught fragments of conversation. "We can make it look like an overdose." "No, we do it clean. He signs the transfer first. Keep him upright. Cameras looped." "Already done." Looped cameras. Transfers. Overdose. Those weren't words from businessmen. Those were operations words. The kind she used to hear whispered in back alleys during her police field training. She didn't think. She moved. Maria swiped her master key card. The door clicked open an inch, and the scene burned itself into her memory forever. Raymond Holt, the billionaire, sat slumped in a chair, shirt collar torn, sweat slick on his skin. His lips were blue. One man stood behind him, holding a syringe. 4 others stood around like guards in a silent play. None of them wore name tags. None of them looked surprised to see her. "Sorry, ma'am," the nearest one said, stepping forward. "This room's off limits." Maria's eyes dropped, just for a second, to the syringe, still half filled with cloudy fluid. The smell in the air told her what her mind already knew. Sedative, industrial grade. She recognized the chemical trace. Her heart pounded so hard it shook her fingers. In her head, she heard her old instructor's voice. "Control your breathing. Identify threats. Act only when there's no other choice." There was no other choice. She reached for her cleaning cart. Her hand found the metal polish sprayer. Stainless steel, pressurized, modified by years of improvisation. In one motion, she flicked off the safety nozzle, aimed, and fired. A burst of blinding mist hit the nearest man square in the eyes. He screamed. The others turned, disoriented by the chemical vapor. Holt slipped sideways, gasping for air. Maria ducked low, kicking the fallen man's knee from behind, her movement fluid, instinctive, efficient. A second attacker swung toward her, grabbing her wrist. She twisted, elbowed him under the jaw, just like she'd been trained years ago, and heard cartilage crack. The syringe clattered across marble. Holt tried to crawl toward it, his lips moving soundlessly, eyes pleading. Maria snatched it first and flung it into the wall where it shattered. The lights flickered. Someone shouted into an earpiece, "Abort! Abort!" Then everything went black, power cut. For 2 seconds, there was nothing but breath and darkness. When emergency lights came on, the hallway camera caught only a half frame. Image: Maria kneeling beside Holt, hand pressed to his chest, her face half-shadowed, calm, alert, alive with purpose. Behind her, the 5 men scattered like smoke, vanishing down stairwells before security could respond. By the time police arrived, she'd stabilized Holt with improvised CPR and tied off the blood flow on his arm with her cleaning rag. When they pulled her away from the scene, she didn't resist. She just said, "Check the syringe. That's your truth." But the truth didn't survive the night. Hours later, the hotel issued a press statement. An employee interfered with a guest medical emergency, causing injuries to private contractors. Mr. Holt remains in critical condition. The same footage that showed her saving him was lost in a system error, and by morning, Maria De Luna, cleaner, immigrant, mother, was under investigation for assault and reckless endangerment. The woman who had saved a billionaire's life was now the suspect in his attempted murder. By sunrise, the story had already turned against her. The hotel's PR team moved faster than the truth ever could. Within hours, every major outlet carried the same sterile headline: "Unidentified hotel employee assaults security detail during medical incident." Her name hadn't been released yet, but someone leaked it by noon. A photo from her work ID appeared on social media, unsmiling, hairnet visible, eyes weary. Comment sections lit up. Crazy maid attacks billionaire's guards. Probably trying to rob him. They should check her immigration papers. In less than a day, Maria De Luna went from anonymous worker to global villain. Meanwhile, Raymond Holt, the billionaire she'd saved, remained in a medically induced coma. Without his voice, her truth had no witness. Detectives questioned her in a windowless room that smelled of old coffee and disinfectant. They treated her like a suspect, not a savior. One man leaned back in his chair and asked, "Why were you in the room?" "To clean it," she said softly. After hours, "They changed my shift." "Who told you that?" "My supervisor. And where's he now?" "Gone home, I think." But the supervisor hadn't gone home. By the time internal investigators reached his address, it was empty. His records, erased from the hotel's system. His badge number didn't exist. When Maria mentioned the syringe, they looked at each other like she was delusional. "There was no syringe, Ms. De Luna," one detective said. "Just a cleaning solution spill and a misunderstanding." She stared at him. The lie was so bold it was almost elegant. By the end of that day, she was suspended without pay pending investigation. Her security badge was revoked. Her landlord, frightened by reporters camping outside, taped an eviction notice to her door. Miguel stopped going to class. He didn't know what to tell his professors or his friends. Then came the networks. A blurred clip from the security feed, edited, cropped, incomplete, hit the evening broadcasts. It showed Maria lunging toward a man with something metallic in her hand. The sound was distorted, but the image was enough. "This is the moment she attacked," said the anchor, his voice smooth, detached. "Sources say the billionaire was receiving emergency medical assistance when the maid panicked." The clip cut off right before she caught Holt as he fell. The public didn't see the rescue. They saw only violence. Within 48 hours, Chamard maid attack was trending. Commentators debated her mental state. Immigration officials confirmed she was on a work visa, an easy target for outrage. Anonymous accounts began posting her address. Miguel tried to defend her online and paid for it. "Your mom's a psycho," one message said. "She tried to kill her boss." Maria told him to stop. "Let them talk," she said. "They will forget." But deep down, she knew better. The world doesn't forget women like her. It erases them. She filed a statement with the police, insisting that the men in black weren't hotel security, that they were imposters. The investigator smiled thinly and said, "Do you have proof?" "The camera footage," which was corrupted. "Then check the hotel's private server." Access denied. Each answer led to another wall. Meanwhile, Holt's company released a statement of its own. "Mr. Holt's health is stable. We thank the hotel staff and security personnel who responded swiftly. We condemn any interference that may have complicated emergency measures. No mention of Maria, no mention of the attack, and in a sterile evidence locker somewhere downtown, the broken syringe, the only physical proof, quietly vanished from the chain of custody." That night, Maria sat in her dark apartment, news voices echoing from a flickering TV. Luna, her cat, rubbed against her leg, purring, unaware of the storm outside. Miguel sat on the floor beside her. His eyes were red. "Mom, why don't they believe you?" "Because I'm not the story they want." She turned off the TV. In the silence that followed, something hardened in her chest. Not anger, not fear, but clarity. The kind she'd known years ago when she stood against corruption and lost everything. For the second time in her life, Maria de Luna understood. Truth had no power if the wrong people told it. 3 days after the attack, Maria de Luna disappeared from the news cycle, replaced by a new scandal, a celebrity arrest, a political rumor. The world had moved on, but she hadn't. She still walked the same cracked sidewalks every morning, her head down, scarf pulled low, carrying an old flip phone that buzzed with silence. Miguel was staying with a friend, afraid reporters would follow him. The apartment felt hollow. Just a half-packed suitcase, a cat that still waited by the door, and the echo of her own thoughts. Then, one night, her phone buzzed. "Unknown number. A text message. You don't know me. I know what happened in 1807. Meet me where you used to wait for the 61 bus. Midnight. No name. No explanation." Just that. She hesitated for hours. The police had warned her not to interfere in the ongoing investigation, but curiosity and desperation outweighed fear. By midnight, she stood at the corner of Lark and 7th, the bus stop where she'd waited every night after shifts. The air smelled like rain and burnt coffee. A car pulled up, old, gray, quiet. The driver's window rolled down. A woman's voice, "You're Maria?" "Yes. Get in." "We don't have long." The woman was in her 30s, sharp-eyed, wearing a press badge. "Lena Tran," she said. "Independent investigative journalist. Used to cover corporate fraud until I got blacklisted. You can thank Holt's company for that." Maria stared. "Why are you helping me?" Lena handed her a USB drive. "Because I've been digging into Holt Industries for a year. The night you saved him, he was hours away from signing documents that would expose internal embezzlement. Billions funneled through shell corporations. He was going to blow the whistle on his own board." Maria's pulse quickened. The men were hired by his company's private security contractors. Black ops, no hotel affiliation. "So they tried to silence him, and you got in the way." Maria's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't just collateral damage. She'd interrupted a corporate assassination, but they said the footage was gone, Maria whispered. "Not all of it." Lena opened her laptop, showed a grainy clip. It was security camera footage. The same angle the networks had used, but longer, uncut. The missing seconds were there. The moment Maria lunged, the syringe shattering, Holt collapsing, her catching him before he hit the ground. Lena looked up. "They buried this. Someone inside the hotel leaked it to me anonymously. But it's not enough on its own. We need Holt awake to confirm it." "He's still in a coma," Maria said softly. "For now," Lena said. but his doctor's been pressured to transfer him to a private facility, off the record. Maria clenched her fists. The pattern was clear. Erase witnesses, rewrite reality. How do we stop them? Lena smiled faintly. By being louder than their lies. For the next 2 days, they worked quietly, cross-referencing employee logs, financial transfers, and erased security files. Lena's contacts in digital forensics recovered fragments from Maria's hotel-issued handheld scanner, timestamps matching the moment of the attack. Every piece of data was a small pulse of hope. Then, on the morning of the 7th day, Holt woke up. The headline was small, almost unnoticed. Tech CEO regains consciousness after mysterious collapse. Maria saw it and wept for the first time since it all began. Hours later, Lena got a call from an unknown number. She listened, then met Maria's eyes. "It's him," she said. "He wants to talk." They met in a private hospital room, where sunlight filtered through gray curtains. Holt looked frail but lucid, his voice roughened by medication. "I remember you," he said, studying Maria's face. "You were there when I couldn't breathe." Maria lowered her gaze. "I just did what I had to." "You did more than that," he said. "You saved me. They wanted me dead," he turned to Lena. "They'll try again. You both need to be careful." Lena pressed record on her phone. "Tell us everything." And he did. Names, payments, encrypted accounts. Everything the board had done to silence him. Everything they'd stolen. Maria listened, her hands trembling. For the first time since that night, she wasn't invisible. She was essential. By dusk, Lena had enough evidence to shake an empire. By dawn, the first files leaked online, encrypted folders labeled Project Quiet Room, financial transfers, security rosters, lists of payments to contracted specialists. It was the beginning of the storm, this time one they controlled. It began with silence, no more phone calls, no more leaks. For 48 hours after Holt's testimony was recorded, the world seemed to hold its breath, the calm before a corporate hurricane. Lena had sent the files to 3 independent journalists in 3 different countries. If anything happened to her or Maria, the information would still surface. At 7:03 a.m., the first story hit. Whistleblower CEO targeted in corporate conspiracy. Security footage contradicts official narrative. By 8 a.m., it was everywhere. By 9 a.m., Holt Industries stock froze trading. By 9:15 a.m., black SUVs began circling the street outside Maria's apartment. Inside, Maria packed quietly. "No panic, just focus." Years of discipline reduced fear to routine. Miguel waited near the door, clutching a worn backpack. "They're coming, Mom." "I know," she said, checking the window. "But this time they'll have cameras waiting for them." Across the street, reporters were already assembling. Lena had tipped them off an hour earlier. Every lens, every microphone, every live stream was trained on the Regent Grand Hotel, where Holt, now out of the hospital, had announced a press conference. The same marble lobby where the attack began was now flooded with media. Maria stood at the back of the room, hood up, hands shaking slightly. Lena beside her whispered, "If he names them publicly, it's over." Then Holt walked in. No suit, no entourage, just a man reclaiming his voice. Flashbulbs cracked like thunder. He stepped to the podium. 8 days ago, I almost died in this building, he began. It wasn't an accident. It was an attempt to silence me for uncovering crimes inside my own company. The room rippled with murmurs. Holt continued, his voice steady. The only reason I'm alive is because of a woman this hotel tried to destroy. Her name is Maria de Luna. Every camera turned. The crowd parted slightly, a sea of light and faces, until Maria stood exposed, small and motionless. She saved my life when my own security tried to end it. She was punished for her courage. Today, I'm here to make that right. He looked directly at her. Maria, will you join me? Her legs felt heavy, but she moved. Each step echoed across marble, the same corridor where she had once been invisible. Reporters shouted her name. She reached the podium, eyes glistening but fierce. A man in a tailored suit, one of the board members Holt had named in the leaked documents, suddenly stood up from the front row. This is a setup, he barked. "You're both lying. Those files are fabricated." Lena, already filming, turned her phone toward him. "Then explain this," she said. She played the uncut footage on a portable screen. The real 43 seconds. The syringe. The struggle. The truth. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of electricity. The man's face drained of color. He took a step back, muttering something about legal counsel, then pushed through the crowd, straight into a waiting camera crew. The image went live. There was no undoing it now. Outside, the SUVs sped away. Inside, applause broke out. Slow at first, then rising until it filled the hall. Maria didn't smile. She just breathed deeply for the first time in days. She turned to Holt and said quietly, "They'll come after you again." He nodded. "Let them try. They don't own the story anymore." In that moment, for the first time since the attack, the power shifted. The narrative, once crafted by corporations and headlines, now belonged to the people who had lived it. By sunrise the next morning, the headlines had flipped. Hotel maid exonerated, after corporate cover-up exposed. Security, contractor arrested for attempted assassination. The billionaire and the housekeeper who brought down a shadow network. For once, the media didn't twist the story. They amplified it. The leaked evidence was undeniable. Encrypted emails, financial transfers, private security rosters showing ties to international black ops groups. Every fact corroborated what Maria and Holt had risked everything to prove. The FBI raided 3 Holt Industries satellite offices before noon. 6 board members were arrested for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and corporate espionage. The private security firm that had employed the 5 men collapsed overnight under federal seizure. But the real victory wasn't in the arrests. It was in the vindication. Maria sat in the same chair she'd once used for nightly uniform repairs. Her name now flashing across every channel, not as a suspect, not as a victim, but as a hero. Lena visited with a cup of strong coffee and the widest smile Maria had ever seen. "You realize your name is trending in 15 countries?" Maria laughed softly. For the first time, they spelled it right. A knock on the door interrupted them. When she opened it, Holt was there, in jeans and a windbreaker instead of his billionaire armor. He handed her a sealed envelope. "What's this?" she asked. He smiled. "The future." Inside was a letter of appointment. Director of Crisis Response and Security Training, Holt Foundation for Ethical Innovation. "You saved me once," Holt said. "Now I want you to train others to save the next person. Every hotel, every service worker, every invisible hero who thinks no one will believe them. We're building a network for them." Maria blinked back tears. "I don't know if I'm qualified." "Maria," Holt said, his tone gentle but firm, "you're the reason I'm still alive. That makes you more qualified than anyone I know." Within weeks, the foundation launched publicly. The press called it the DeLuna Initiative, a global effort to provide self-defense, de-escalation, and whistleblower protection training for hospitality workers, airports, cruise lines, and hotels around the world signed on. Workers who'd once been ignored were now seen, heard, and trained to protect themselves and their guests. Miguel, now 13, watched the news with wide eyes. "They're showing your story in my civics class," he said proudly. "My teacher called you the woman who redefined courage." Maria smiled, ruffling his hair. "Courage doesn't mean being fearless, mijo. It means doing what's right even when you're shaking." Outside, a new sign glowed over the hotel that had once fired her, Regent Grand. A Holt partner in ethical hospitality, it wasn't just branding. Inside, wages had doubled, cameras were upgraded for safety, and employees now had panic buttons and union representation. The same marble floors where Maria once scrubbed silently now reflected something brighter, respect. But justice reached further still. The congressional hearings that followed Holt's testimony led to the Service Worker Protection Act, a law requiring corporations to guarantee legal counsel and protection for any employee who reports internal crimes or corruption. For the first time in history, invisible workers were written into the law. Maria's photo appeared beside Holt's during the bill signing, a billionaire and a maid side by side, symbolizing what courage could build when class, status, and fear stopped dividing people. 2 years later, the world looked different. The Regent Grand Hotel had become a symbol, not of scandal, but of transformation. Tourists still took photos of the glittering lobby, unaware that beneath its polished floor tiles, history had changed forever. But workers knew. They always did. Every new employee orientation began the same way. A short film titled The 43 Seconds That Saved a Life. It showed the original hallway footage, followed by interviews with Maria, Holt, and dozens of workers whose lives had been changed by the DeLuna initiative. The message wasn't about violence or fame. It was about visibility. Maria stood at the back of one of these sessions, watching recruits in their crisp uniforms, bellhops, housekeepers, concierges, leaning forward in silence. When the lights came up, a young woman in her 20s raised her hand. "Ma'am," she asked shyly, "do you ever wish it hadn't happened?" Maria thought for a long moment before answering. "I wish people didn't have to bleed for others to finally listen," she said softly. "But I don't regret standing up, because when one person refuses to stay invisible, it gives everyone else permission to be seen." That night, she walked out to the hotel balcony overlooking the city skyline. Miguel, now taller than her, joined her with a grin. "They're talking about making a movie about you," he teased. Maria smiled faintly. "They'll make it about him too," she said, glancing toward the stars. "Because it takes more than one person to make change. It takes someone willing to listen." Down below, a worker in a fresh uniform helped a guest carry luggage through the revolving door. For a moment, their eyes met, a quiet nod of recognition between two invisible heroes. The world had moved on, but something fundamental had shifted. The invisible no longer walked in silence. They carried stories, and those stories had power. Every major hotel chain now displayed a small plaque near the staff entrance, in honor of Maria DeLuna, whose courage reminded the world that protection wears many uniforms. Maria's foundation operated in 42 countries, training over 200,000 workers. Holt had stepped away from his company to focus entirely on ethical reform, his once guarded demeanor softened by humility. At a global conference in Geneva, Maria gave the closing address to an audience of executives, veterans, and labor advocates. Her voice, calm and resolute, filled the hall. "The people who clean your rooms, who guard your buildings, who serve your meals, they see everything. They notice the broken locks, the frightened eyes, the moments no one else does. They are your first line of defense, and too often your last thought. Respect them. Protect them. Because the day may come when one of them saves your life. And not because it's their job, but because it's who they are." The audience rose in silence, then thunderous applause. And as the lights dimmed, Maria glanced toward the back row, where the cleaning staff stood. Smiling through tears, for once, the spotlight found them. Dedicated to the invisible protectors who keep the world standing, even when no one's watching. Courage has no uniform. The people who keep our hotels clean, who guard our buildings, who notice what others ignore. They are the silent protectors of our world. See them, respect them, protect them,